Why narcissists speak in plausible deniability. One of the most psychologically disorienting experiences a person can have is dealing with someone who never fully says what they mean, yet somehow leaves emotional destruction behind. Nearly every interaction contains no direct confession of hostility, no open declaration of contempt, no obvious attack that can easily be isolated and presented as proof. Instead, the communication exists in fragments, implications, insinuations, tonal shifts, sarcastic undertones, strange pauses, strategic omissions, and emotionally loaded ambiguities. The narcissist communicates in a way that constantly destabilizes interpretation itself. The target senses hostility, but cannot always fully articulate where it exists. And this is precisely why plausible deniability becomes such a powerful psychological weapon. Plausible deniability is not simply lying. In many cases, it is far more sophisticated than ordinary deception. It is a form of strategic ambiguity designed to preserve multiple realities at the same time. The narcissist wants the emotional impact of aggression without the accountability that comes with direct aggression. They want to injure while remaining socially protected. They want to dominate while appearing innocent. They want emotional control while maintaining the image of reasonableness, calmness, intelligence, or victimhood. The result is a communication style that continuously destabilizes certainty itself. This dynamic becomes especially important when we examine the internal psychology of narcissism. The psychoanalyst Heinz Kohut argued that narcissistic personalities often possess fragile self-structures hidden beneath grandiosity and defensive self-importance. The narcissistic self frequently depends upon constant external regulation in order to maintain stability. Validation, admiration, superiority, control, and psychological dominance become methods of protecting the self from deeper feelings of shame, inferiority, emptiness, or fragmentation. Direct emotional exposure threatens this entire defensive structure. Openly admitting envy, insecurity, dependency, humiliation, or emotional vulnerability risks puncturing the narcissistic identity itself. Therefore, emotional aggression becomes displaced into indirect forms. This is why the narcissist rarely communicates with straightforward emotional honesty. Honesty creates vulnerability. Vulnerability creates exposure. Exposure creates shame. And shame is often experienced by narcissistic personalities not merely as discomfort, but as psychological annihilation. Many researchers have observed that narcissistic individuals experience shame in profoundly destabilizing ways, because their identity structures are heavily organized around avoiding feelings of inferiority. As a result, they often develop communication systems designed not to reveal emotional truth, but to conceal it while still acting it out indirectly. For example, rather than openly saying, "I feel threatened by your confidence," the narcissist may subtly mock confidence itself. Rather than saying, "I envy your happiness," they may begin diminishing the legitimacy of your success or implying superficial explanations for your achievements. Rather than admitting emotional insecurity, they provoke insecurity in others. In this sense, plausible deniability functions as a mechanism of emotional displacement. The narcissist exports internal instability outward into the psychological environment around them. The psychoanalyst Otto Kernberg explored how pathological narcissism often involves deeply split internal object relations, in which people are unconsciously categorized into idealized or devalued positions. Others become mirrors through which the narcissist regulates self-worth. When another person possesses qualities that trigger envy, inadequacy, or inferiority, the narcissist may unconsciously experience that person as psychologically threatening. But because direct acknowledgement of envy threatens the grandiose self-image, the aggression emerges indirectly. This is why covert narcissistic hostility often appears strangely hidden beneath socially acceptable behavior. The attack exists, but it is concealed beneath enough ambiguity to preserve psychological escape routes. Plausible deniability, therefore, serves multiple functions simultaneously. Socially, it protects the narcissist from accountability. Interpersonally, it destabilizes the target's confidence in their own perception. Internally, it protects the narcissist from confronting disowned emotional realities within themselves. This is why the behavior often appears both deliberate and unconscious at the same time. Part of the narcissist knows exactly what they are doing. Another part remains psychologically defended against fully recognizing the emotional motivations underneath the behavior. The psychiatrist R.D. Laing wrote extensively about mystification in interpersonal relationships. Mystification occurs when one person persistently invalidates or distorts another person's psychological reality, eventually causing the victim to doubt their own perceptions. In narcissistic communication, this process unfolds gradually. The victim repeatedly senses emotional hostility, contradiction, contempt, or manipulation. But each time they attempt to identify it directly, the narcissist reframes the interaction. "That is not what I meant. You are imagining things. You are too sensitive. You always twist my words." The result is not simply confusion about one interaction. Over time, the victim begins losing trust in their interpretive faculties altogether. This is one of the most psychologically devastating aspects of covert narcissistic dynamics. The abuse often attacks perception itself. The victim becomes trapped between emotional intuition and intellectual uncertainty. Their nervous system detects hostility long before conscious analysis can fully explain it. This creates cognitive dissonance, a concept explored by the psychologist Leon Festinger. Cognitive dissonance occurs when contradictory realities exist simultaneously within the mind. The narcissist's words may sound caring, while their tone communicates contempt. Their actions may communicate rejection, while their language insists everything is fine. Their public persona may appear compassionate, while their private interactions feel emotionally predatory. The victim struggles to reconcile these incompatible realities, and the resulting psychological tension becomes exhausting. This prolonged ambiguity gradually alters the victim's nervous system. Human beings function most effectively in environments with coherent feedback. Healthy communication creates alignment between words, emotions, and actions. Narcissistic communication often produces fragmentation instead. The victim begins scanning constantly for hidden meanings. Tone becomes hyperanalyzed. Facial expressions become emotionally loaded. Silences become threatening. Small comments are replayed mentally for hours or days. The nervous system enters a state of hypervigilance because predictability has collapsed. The anthropologist and systems theorist Gregory Bateson explored similar psychological dynamics through the concept of the double bind. A double bind occurs when contradictory messages are delivered simultaneously in ways that make resolution impossible. The narcissist may demand emotional openness while punishing vulnerability. They may insist upon honesty while reacting aggressively to truthful feedback. They may deny hostility while communicating hostility non-verbally. This creates impossible relational conditions in which the victim can never fully stabilize their understanding of reality. Humor becomes one of the narcissist's most effective tools because it naturally embeds plausible deniability into communication. Mockery disguised as teasing allows aggression to hide behind entertainment. The narcissist can insult appearance, intelligence, competence, emotional sensitivity, or vulnerability, while preserving the ability to dismiss the victim's reaction as irrational. "I was only joking. You cannot take a joke." This maneuver is psychologically powerful because it converts the victim's pain into evidence against them. The emotional injury becomes reframed as oversensitivity. The target is not only wounded, but subtly shamed for recognizing the wound. Over time, this creates a profound collapse of psychological boundaries. Victims often stop trusting their emotional reactions entirely. They begin requiring external confirmation before believing their own instincts. Some become emotionally numb. Others become chronically anxious and overanalytical. Many become trapped in obsessive interpretive loops, desperately trying to decode interactions that were intentionally designed to remain unstable. This is one reason narcissistic abuse can become so psychologically consuming. The victim is not merely defending against direct hostility, they are defending against the erosion of certainty itself. The psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott wrote about the development of the false self, a defensive adaptation in which authentic emotional experience becomes hidden beneath socially acceptable performance structures. Narcissistic personalities often become highly identified with such performative selves. Image management becomes central to psychological survival. The appearance of innocence matters more than truth. The appearance of superiority matters more than intimacy. The appearance of moral correctness matters more than accountability. Plausible deniability therefore becomes essential, because it preserves the external image while allowing covert aggression to continue operating underneath the surface. This also explains why victims frequently struggle to explain narcissistic abuse to outsiders. Overt abuse leaves observable evidence. Covert abuse leaves psychological residue. The victim may describe a constant atmosphere of tension, confusion, humiliation, contradiction, or emotional instability. Yet isolated examples sound deceptively minor when removed from the larger relational context. Outsiders often fail to grasp that the damage came not from one sentence, but from thousands of interactions organized around emotional destabilization and interpretive manipulation. Eventually, the victim reaches a critical realization. The problem was never merely one offensive comment or one misunderstanding. The problem was the communication system itself. The narcissist was not seeking mutual understanding. They were seeking asymmetrical psychological control. Healthy communication aims toward clarification, repair, accountability, and emotional coherence. Narcissistic communication often aims toward confusion, destabilization, dominance, and narrative control. This is why healing eventually requires abandoning the endless search for definitive proof. Victims often spend years attempting to force direct admissions from people psychologically organized around concealment, but plausible deniability is specifically designed to prevent closure. The narcissist survives psychologically through ambiguity. The more clearly the manipulation becomes exposed, the more threatened the narcissistic defense structure becomes. True recovery begins when the victim stops obsessing over isolated statements and begins recognizing enduring emotional patterns instead. Do interactions repeatedly produce confusion, anxiety, self-doubt, emotional exhaustion, or psychological instability? Does the person consistently imply hostility while denying responsibility afterward? Do they provoke emotional reactions and then criticize those reactions rather than examining their own behavior? Those recurring patterns reveal the deeper structure beneath the surface. In the end, plausible deniability is not merely a communication habit, it is a psychological architecture of concealment. It allows the narcissist to externalize shame, preserve grandiosity, manipulate perception, avoid accountability, and destabilize others while maintaining the illusion of innocence. But the system depends entirely upon confusion remaining intact. Once the victim fully understands the mechanism, much of the narcissist's psychological power begins collapsing. Covert manipulation cannot survive indefinitely in the presence of sustained clarity, because clarity exposes the hidden structure underneath the performance.